Hello ladies and gentlemen, and here we are with a advanced OBS guide. We will be talking about 3 settings specific. We will talk about keyframe intervals, CPU presets, and downscale filters. Why are we talking about this? These are the three settings that aren't talked about at all, really, and people just screw around with them. Their streams trying to lag or look bad, and you don't quite know what to do, and they just give up on streaming, and we don't want that to happen. So let's jump right in. So what are keyframe intervals, or specifically keyframes? Keyframes are the points in the video where the entire frame is sent, instead of just the differences of a frame. Having a keyframe interval of 2 means it takes at most 2 seconds for the viewer to catch up to the point where they can properly display the feed. This is specifically for Twitch, since there are a lot of people that watch on mobile, and they just need that slight buffer to catch up with the stream to watch it smoothly. So moving on to CPU presets, what a CPU preset basically does, the faster it is, the less CPU processing power goes into encoding the image. It has all to do with how much CPU you can use. The slower it is, the more CPU power it will take, the better the image will look. But the problem is, just leave it at very fast. That's the norm. You don't really need more unless you have a dedicated streaming PC. Then you could go to somewhere between fast and medium, depending on what you have in the streaming PC. If you're recording a video, though, depending on what video you will record, you can change it. Like, for instance, I'm using right now medium for this. So, you know, it always depends on what you want to record, since you can, like, stop the recording, and then you just can reinvigorate what settings you're going to use. Moving on to downscale filters. Downscale filters is specifically something that isn't talked about at all a lot. A lot of people just don't know what it does. What it does, it takes a small bit of CPU resources to crisp up the image. In short detail, it's basically re-rendering an image to make it look more crisp. This theory provides the best possible reconstruction of an image. So 32 samples is of course the best. If you want to, you can set it to 60 samples, but if you are having high encoding and you keep up with it, just set it to the default. This was it for this short guide. This was just something to show you guys what these settings do, so you can optimize your OBS settings to your computer.
Hello Legion, I'm Gerald Undone, and today I'm going to talk about streaming. Now this is going to be a pretty technical video, so for the rest of my subscribers that maybe are looking for a little bit more of an upbeat or fun video, this is not going to be it. This is going to be pretty technical. So if you aren't interested in that, feel free to skip this one and check back tomorrow. But for everybody else who is interested in streaming, using OBS, and wants to see some comparison stuff and understand some differences between, you know, NVENC codecs and X264 codecs, and whether to use your CPU or your GPU, that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to be all about streaming. So let's get undone. Gerald Undone. It's crazy. So yesterday I decided to try and stream for the first time using this channel, and I encountered some difficulties. I was using OBS because I use it for local recordings, and so I figured it'd be pretty easy transition to the streaming. But there's a whole lot of hurdles that I encountered regarding the streaming that I had to sort of overcome. And when I looked online, although there's quite a bit of resources for OBS and for streaming, a lot of them seemed out of date. A lot of the tutorials that I looked at featured software that has things and locations that doesn't even match mine, because I'm using OBS Studio and a lot of people still have the tutorials for OBS Classic. So this will hopefully serve as an information session for people interested in streaming or people who already are streaming and want to improve a little bit, and some things that I found. I've got quite a few comparisons and benchmarks to share with you. Okay, so let's start with just a little bit of an introduction on OBS, because that's what I've been using to stream, and that's what this tutorial is going to be about. So this is OBS Studio. It's a little bit different than the OBS Classic that a lot of the guides and tutorials that are available now are featuring. So over here you've got your settings on the right, you've got a mixer right here, and you've got your sources. So if you've never used OBS before, I'll give you a quick little rundown. You add sources here by hitting the plus, and that's where you add in, say, like, I have GTA 5 in case you want to capture a video game, if you want to do a webcam, if you want to capture your screen, that kind of thing. Over here you add audio sources, and you can bring up the mixer, and you can change the levels that you want the different volumes to be at. Or if one of them's out of sync, you can delay it that way as well. Then over here you've got start streaming, start recording, or stop recording, because I'm recording this video right now through OBS, and then you've got your settings. Now if we take a look at the settings, a lot of these are just preference, but we'll skip most of them. And here's where you're going to set your streaming services. If you're streaming to YouTube or streaming to Twitch, you're going to put it in here and put in the key. Most of the guides online for that stuff is all pretty consistent. Audio, you know, I mean, you can put your inputs and outputs and the sample rate. I wouldn't worry too much about that right now. And hotkeys, and then advanced. So really what we need to worry about is output. Now, I'm going to talk about streaming. I have my recording outputs, but we're not going to talk about local recording right now, because I don't really find many issues with local recording, because with local recording you can just jack the bitrate way up and you'll have a good recording, because bitrate isn't as important because you're not streaming, so it doesn't really matter. What I'm going to talk about is streaming right now. So with streaming, this is grayed out because I'm recording currently, so I'm not able to change it, but here you would have your encoder. And I have 3 different encoders to choose from. One is the one you see here right now, which is NVNC H264. This is using my NVIDIA graphics card. So there's a lot of talk online about how, you know, this is the most efficient but the worst quality. The other 2 options are QuickSync, which is Intel's chip using the Intel graphics card that allows you to encode video. So you're offloading, so you're not using the video card that you're using for gaming, and you're not using the cores of the CPU that are used for processing the encoding. You're using an extra chunk of the CPU in the iGPU. And then the other option is X264, which is purely software CPU based. Now this one will have a big hit on your system, and it's because it uses the processor to encode and compress on the fly. Now, if you are playing something, if you're using something that's CPU intensive, then using X264 might be tricky for you. Now, it's important when talking about these 3 different codecs to keep in mind, this is primarily for people who are streaming from the PC that they're also doing the content on, whether that's playing a game or, you know, video, whatever it is. If you're capturing from another source, if you're capturing from, say, you've got a console, a PlayStation 4, Xbox, whatever hooked up, and you're capturing from that, well, the console is handling all the load of playing the game. So all the computer needs to do in that case is render, encode, compress. So in that case, you could probably use the CPU one, because there are some advantages of that, and you can use, you know, 90% of your CPU on encoding because you're not using it to play the game. I try to do it all at once. I try to stream the game or whatever I'm doing from the computer that I'm doing it on, so I need to save as much CPU as possible. So I was trying to look in to see whether or not, like, what the best quality I could get using either NVIDIA or QuickSync in order to stream, because when I was using X264 it was a bit hard on my system. And I'll show you a couple benchmarks in a second. But secondly, I'm just going to go through these real quick. So the rate control, yeah, it's CBR, VBR, CQP, and lossless. So CBR and VBR, you'll see them everywhere. CBR is constant bitrate and VBR is variable bitrate. So constant bitrate means just what it sounds like. You put a bitrate in here, so say I've got 8,000 written. That means it's going to try to maintain 8,000 for your bitrate all the time. And this is measured in kilobits per second, the bit rate. So we've got 8,000 kilobits per second or 8 megabits per second. And it'll try to keep that consistent. If we put it to variable bit rate, then the bit rate works more like a target. Like, you know, it's going to try to float around the 8,000 kilobits per second, but In scenes that's really intense, it might have to up it, and in ones where there's not, it's just a static image, it can lower the bitrate. So variable bitrate generally creates sort of better quality and file size, but for streaming, a lot of people recommend constant bitrate because at least then you're going to have a steady flow of data through the stream, which is better for buffering and for receiving something consistent on the other end. Keyframe interval, you're going to want to set it to 2. Then the preset here for, this is the preset for NVENC. I find default to be the best. And profile, I've read a bunch about this. A lot of people say main, and I think that's because of compatibility in the past. But I've done a few comparisons on a bunch of different devices, and I've also read a bunch about it. And most tech experts agree that these days, anything that can handle main can handle high, and vice versa. There's not a lot of devices that will only be able to take main, and that high will be incompatible. So that's the basic settings. For each setting type, there's going to be different settings for here, different presets and that kind of thing. With X264, you'll have, so I'm going to jump out of my recording tab just to show you because I have the other options here. If you set the encoder to X264, you're going to have different things like CPU usage preset, which has anything ultra fast, super fast, very fast, all the way down.
Conheço seu
Bem-vindo
território.
a Summoner's Rift.
Beleza.
30 segundos para a liberação das tropas.
Cuidado. Vamos nessa.
Tropas liberadas.
Ah, quem precisa de um mapa? Sem tempo a perder. Deixa comigo. Por aqui.
Você foi eliminado.
Boom. Headshot.
Conheço seu território. Vamos nessa.
Um inimigo foi eliminado.
Deixa comigo. Ah, quem precisa de um mapa? Cuidado. tempo a perder. Beleza.
Boom. Headshot.
Hora de sujar as mãos.
O inimigo foi eliminado.
Boom.
Um aliado foi eliminado.
Vamos nessa. Deixa comigo.
Um aliado foi eliminado.
Por aqui. Isso parece perigoso. Tô dentro. Sem tempo a perder. Cuidado.
O inimigo foi eliminado.
Eu cuido disso. Hora de atacar. Quem precisa de um mapa? Sem problemas.
Um
Vamos
aliado foi eliminado.
É só habilidade. Eu cuido disso. Sem tempo a perder. inimigo. Quem precisa de um mapa? Conheço o seu território. Hora de atacar!
O inimigo foi eliminado. Você foi eliminado.
Headshot.
Um aliado foi eliminado.
Beleza.
Foi inimigo.
É só habilidade. Sem problema.
O inimigo foi eliminado.
Sem tempo a perder. Vamos nessa.
O inimigo foi
Deixa
eliminado.
comigo. Isso
O
parece...
inimigo foi eliminado.
Beleza.
Sua equipe destruiu.
Eu cuido disso. Por aqui. Conheço o seu território. Cuidado. É só habilidade.
Neutralizado. Neutralizado.
Falhar. Cuidado. Pra lá. Hora de sujar as mãos.
Um inimigo foi eliminado. Um aliado foi eliminado.
Hora de atacar. Sem tempo a perder.
Um inimigo foi eliminado. Você eliminou um inimigo.
Conheça o seu território.
Foi eliminado. Enfurecido. Um inimigo foi eliminado. Sua equipe destruiu tudo.
Pra lá.
Sua equipe destruiu uma torre.
Beleza.
O inimigo foi eliminado.
Cuidado.
Um aliado foi eliminado.
Isso parece perigoso. Tô dentro.
Um inimigo foi eliminado.
Vamos nessa. Sem tempo a perder.
Implacável.
Hora de sujar as
Sua
mãos.
equipe destruiu uma torre.
É só habilidade. Por aqui.
Você eliminou um inimigo.
Sem tempo a perder. Por aqui.
Killing spree.
Conheço o seu território. Sem problemas. Isso parece perigoso. Tô dentro. Eu.
Implacável.
Pra lá.
Um inimigo foi eliminado. Neutralizado.
Hora de atacar.
Um aliado foi eliminado. Sua equipe destruiu uma torre.
Tô dentro.
Sua equipe destruiu uma torre. O inimigo foi eliminado. Um aliado foi eliminado.
Deixa comigo. Eu cuido disso. Sem problema. Vamos nessa.
O inimigo foi eliminado.
É só habilidade. Hora de sujar aqui.
Sua equipe destruiu.
Sem tempo a perder.
Neutralizado.
Por aqui!
Um inimigo foi eliminado. Um aliado foi eliminado. Um inimigo foi eliminado. Double
Deixa
kill.
comigo. Sem problemas.
Enfurecido.
Conheço o seu território. Eu cuido disso. Cuidado. Parece perigoso. Ah, quem precisa de um mapa? Vamos nessa! Pra lá! Cuidado!
Eliminado.
Deixa comigo!
Foi eliminado. Sua equipe destruiu um inibidor. Sua equipe destruiu uma torre.
Conheço o seu território.
Um aliado foi eliminado. Sua equipe destruiu um inibidor. Sua equipe destruiu. Sua equipe destruiu uma torre. O inibidor inimigo ressurgirá em breve.
Vamos nessa!
Foi eliminado.
Por aqui!
Um inimigo foi eliminado. Destruiu um inibidor. Foi eliminado.
Sem problema!
Neutralizado.
Hello, Legion. I'm Gerald Undone, and today I'm going to talk about streaming. Now, this is going to be a pretty technical video, so to the rest of my subscribers that maybe are looking for a little